Okay, so I've started the recording. Basically, what I'm going to try to walk y'all through is kind of how I do my QBRs and get that set up for whenever I go out. I do probably about 6 to 10 of these a quarter right now. I'm trying to get that number up a little bit more. But I found these QBRs to be very successful. It is very rare that I don't come out of a meeting with additional MRR or signed hardware or project work. And the way that I use it is as a long-term strategy. I will put stuff on the QBR sometimes 12 to 18 months in advance from when I know that they're going to purchase it, because I want them to see it in front of them, their face 3, 4, 5 times before I'm ready for them to make the final decision. A good example would be like a cloud migration. If I know a server is going to need to be replaced next year. The example we're going to be using today, Hub Trucker, is actually a client of mine that has this. I started in my Q2, start talking about cloud, the benefits of cloud, and every quarter we talk about that as we're getting them prepared to make that mental leap to say yes when we're ready to move them to the cloud instead of replacing another on-prem server. Uh, so I found it's a good way of getting rid of some objection. They actually have told me in the past that they absolutely hate the idea of the cloud just because they want to have their data within their hands. This thing just physically have something they can grab, basically. So it's mostly just out of fear. Okay, so I use the basic 20 template. You can get that on IT Glue. I put it in the chat so you can grab it here. And what I basically do is just kind of go through that. Obviously, you would change your logo and stuff like that. And there's 5 specific sections that you're going to fill out. And each of these sections are, this is designed primarily to bring conversation to the forefront, questions, answers in such a way that you're able to kind of lead the conversation to where you need it to go. So what I'm going to do is more or less just kind of walk you through creating the QBR the way I do it. Typically, I will have more than one screen to work on, but because of the recording, we're going to be doing this on a single screen today. And let me see here. I can make sure I've got everything. And I'm going to be using kind of like an existing one just as a guide, and then we're going to be replacing it with new information. All right, so under the service summary, most of the information I'm going to get here is going to be from VSA and BMS. I have a specific report that I run. So once you're in VSA, this may not be in everybody's because I'm in VSA 1, but under VSA 1, you get to Info Center Reports. If you're in here, I do have it up here. It's called my executive summary. I'll go ahead and show you what I have on here so that you can recreate it. But basically, I am grabbing client information, operating systems, licenses. Let's see, somebody I think messed with this. So one of the downsides of putting my report public is that people will sometimes mess with it. Let's see what we got here. I'm going to run the report. Yeah, so here we go. So this is basically what we have. Now, the fastest way that I have found to do this, it's not the prettiest way, but it's the fastest way, is I use a program called ShareX. It basically lets me take screenshots, kind of like Snagit, but I can do it with a hotkey. So I can take specific screenshots. I will literally just drag and drop, move it over, copy and paste on there. I do have like a little white spot to just kind of get rid of the Kaseya logo. And then I grab the other piece down here. So that simple as that. I've got my VSA information on here. We can go over how we've been doing the patches. If there are unscanned patches or missing patches, why is it that they were on there? Most of the time, what we have found is if there is patches that are missing, it is because there is a computer that is not used very often, or like a laptop that has been turned off for a while. And I know on this particular case, they have a laptop that they have turned off most of the time, so that's why it's missing that many patches here. And then we have another person who is only works 2 days a week, and so often will do that. The other big one that I get is going to be the ticket summary information that I grab from BMS. Now, what I've done in BMS is under reports, I go to ad hoc reports. What I've done is I have created a report here, and what we basically have done is we are taking a data field, we're grabbing the client's name, the created on date, queue name, and the ticket status, because I want to see the tickets per queue, whether it was an alert, whether it was taken care of by the support desk or on site. And so that's what we pull on here. And then when I run that report, it basically is going to pull that for every client I have, not any one individual. So what I will typically do is I will pull this one time for the entire quarter, and then I can refer back to it whenever I'm creating what I need to. And then what I'll do is I will export that to an Excel. So then I have the raw data. Now I have a custom Excel spreadsheet that I use that I'm going to go ahead and put into IT Glue after this call, and I can share the link with y'all. But I kind of use this data to make it pretty with some pivot tables. It's fairly simple. And once you have it, it's basically copy paste, because I've got a couple of sheets on there, so it does most of the searches by the company names. So it is able to copy and paste the information, and it will pop back. It will change pretty automatically once you have it set up. So it's a one-time setup. And then I've been having issues with OneDrive this afternoon. Give me a second here to see if we can kill it. I have to kill it and reopen it. Now, at any time that you have any questions, feel free to stop me and ask anything. If you want me to dive deeper into stuff, feel free to do that as well. I've been doing this for about a year now. When I first started, it took me probably about an hour to 2 hours to put a QBR together, the paperwork, which was not ideal, obviously. But at this point, I can pump it out in about 15 to 20 minutes from beginning to end, right, per report. So, it's still not automatic. It's mostly because of all the various silos that the data is sitting in. All right, let's see this open up now. There we go. Okay, so this is basically what I use. This is my spreadsheet that I have. So I've got the raw data that I can push in here. So client name, created on, etc. I can take that over. Throw it on here. And then what we're basically doing is we've got pivot tables. So what I've created is basically a pivot table that is just using client name and queue, and it's just counting the numbers on there for the columns, values, and rows. And then what I'm doing with that data is basically created just a little fanciest looking thing on here that's set up to pull from the pivot table based off of the client name. So if I have a client, I can set this up one time, and then every time I post my data in the raw data, it's as simple as refreshing the pivot table. So copy paste, refresh pivot table, and then these update automatically. Once I have these, I can change the dates on here. Same thing as before. I basically use my ShareX or Snagit to grab that. I'm usually a little bit more precise with this. But I like the ShareX because I can move one pixel at a time to make sure it looks nice, and then we'll move that over. So that, for me, is all the information I bring in from BMS is primarily the number of tickets that we had closed during that quarterly period and, where they fell out of. If I notice that for some reason, like here, we're seeing a lot of on-site tickets that are coming up, that would be a conversation. Why is it doing it? Is it a issue with employees not calling the support desk and instead going straight to us? In which case we need to find out who are the people doing that and reinforce the procedures to get help. In this particular case, we actually had several on-site movements of equipment, moving offices and stuff like that. So in this particular case, it wasn't that big of an anomaly. Let's see. And then another piece of, after that, I typically will grab our customer thermometer information from the 20. So I rarely have enough of these to go for any individual customer. So if you've got if you have enough for one customer to pull up only their data, I would do that. I typically will aggregate it just because of the number of responses I typically get are fairly low. Same thing. I like to copy and paste that over. And one of the things I've liked doing, and has been taken very well, is if I've got these comments popping up, these I find are really good at reinforcing the value of the 20 support desk. Whenever we're seeing like the names of individual technicians up there and how well that they've done, I like to kind of point those out to the person in charge, just so that they're aware, hey, people are thinking we're doing a good job. Here's actual comments from people using our services. And that's the service delivery. Next one is going to be business continuity. So your backup, disaster recovery, things like that. This particular case, this one is using a Unitrends, but for this example, I'm going to go ahead and use Datto. So typically what I would do is I would come into a Datto Unitrends wherever my backup solution is, and I would just like before, grab the information. Again, the point is mostly to show them, hey, we are doing what you pay us to do. There are no errors that have not been taken care of. Some of these have been removed, and I haven't moved them out of my system yet, which is why we'll get these. Back to the home viewers. And so this would be something that I'd have up there. Another thing that we have often is if you have SaaS backup, I would pull that in, just take a picture of it. If you have, perhaps if you have file level backup or workstation in user backup, I would go ahead and pull that in. Snapshots. We do have file level backup that we provide from data deposit box, and so typically I would take a snapshot of systems that we're backing up there, and the number of the data that's backed up on there. The next big section we have is cybersecurity. Other things I would typically add here. Yeah. Other things I would typically add in the backup disaster recovery and the business continuity is if they don't have Citricom or whatever VoIP provider that you want that can do failover, I would typically put that in here as just a mention. Depending on the client, I will often put in SD-WAN or maybe Datto's DNA or some sort of 4G failover. If I think that that's something that they need, I would put in the information about it here, typically as like a one sheet or a half sheet, just something that they can like see, nothing more than, you know, a couple sentences worth of information that they can just hit. Because for me, it's about, especially when I'm trying to sell them new stuff that they've never heard of or may not think that they need, I want to make sure that there's repetition. So I don't necessarily have to go for the kill the first time I bring it, but over time, they stop remembering where they heard about this information, and they just remember that they know about it, and that's a good thing for their business, and so it makes it easier for the sale. It's just a fun little trick of the psychology of the brain. Okay, so back over to cybersecurity on here. Do you have a question for me? No. Okay.
I'm good.
We're doing Deep Instinct. Things to mention is most of the time here it is going to be set for 7 days. I am doing quarterly, so I'm going to go to 3 months on here. I will typically take a picture of these open events, show them what we have. I like to take a picture of the total files scanned. And if there were prevented events, I will typically take at least one of them, especially a scary one, put it up on here, show them what it was, kind of what it looked like, malware dropper, you know, kind of reinforces what we're doing there. Another big thing that we do is we do FuseMail for a lot of our clients. We don't have all of our clients on here, but the ones that we do, I will put this information on here. So once you're logged into FuseMail and you go to one of your clients from the dashboard, this is a little bit weird to pull up. You basically are going to put in on your display options the time frame you want. So I've got one frame, and then typically on here, I like to use the pie because it's a lot easier to read. And then we can show them that we are, you know, we have basically stop nearly 20% of bad emails. In this case, nearly 25 or over 25,000 emails that didn't get to them that could have been wasting their time or caused problems if somebody opened it. And again, with everything that we're doing on the QBR, the goals are to start conversations and to reinforce the value that we're bringing in. Or at least that's what my goals are. And then we have started putting in deep dark web ID onto any of our existing clients. So whether we have compromises or not, we will pull this up, take a picture of it, and then we will post it on here. Now, a couple of things. If there are compromises on there, we will pull them up and we will print it out as a spreadsheet to hand over to the point of contact or the owner. We only print one out and we let them know that this is, you know, kind of your eyes only. We need to go through that and we want to destroy it once it's done. Don't leave it laying around. Or I will take it back from them after they've looked at it if they'd like me to approach the individual users and make sure that we have changed all of the passwords that are using the compromised password and credentials and moving forward from there. The other big one for cybersecurity is we do open DNS. So one of the things that I like to do on here is open DNS will only go back for the last 30 days. It's one of the things I don't like about it as much. I guess I probably have an event. But similar things, I like to take the blocks that look good, move them over. And if there is a big event, like this large spike right here, excuse me, I'll pull up and figure out what's going on. So it looks like, in this particular case, we had somebody in the warehouse was trying to pull up porn on company clock. So this would be something I would obviously bring to the attention of the owner and let them figure out what they want to do. We don't create policy. We just help the owner enforce it and give them information to make their decisions on what they want to do. So usually if I do see a spike like we did in that last one, I will pull it up to try to get an idea as why. So whenever the question comes, well, what's this, what's that, I'll have the answer for it.
All right.
And then that brings us over to compliance. Now this is going to be a lot more customized depending on your state or depending on the individual customer on what compliance they are or are not under. For me, we typically will bring up NIST in all of our initial QBRs, because even though they may not have to be NIST compliant, we let them know that the NIST framework is what we kind of work under for our security and passwords, and just give them an idea of what we're doing. Here in Texas, we actually do have some very strong cyber breach laws, and most people are not aware of them. So for the last 3 or so QBR cycles and moving forward, this will always be in here. It's just a nice, helpful reminder. Nobody can ever tell you didn't let me know if I can go back and show them 8 printed documents that they were given that had it in there every single time. So they were told every quarter that this was an issue. And so usually I will go over this more in depth on the first time we bring it up, what it means, what we're going to be looking for, like what it means for them if something happens, just the kind of mechanics of it, the penalties of it, but then, let them know that, you're not going to be looking for things like breaches. That is a word that, we let lawyers use, not so much us IT people, but we wanted to make sure that they were aware of it. If they have any kind of PCI compliance, HIPAA compliance, SOX, FINRA, this would also be where I'd put that to discuss it. So if there's any deficits that they currently have in, for example, HIPAA compliance, I would list out the deficits that they currently have that we need to fix. And that would be the point in which I would talk about how we could fix them, what cost it would take, if any, and timelines for that. And since this is regulatory, it's not so much should I, shouldn't I, it's a we have to do it, here's the timeline, here's the cost, sign off most of the time. And then the last thing is going to be projects and recommendations. So this is the part where I try to trumpet what we've been doing. So in the last year or quarter, I will put any of the big things that we've done. And then I will have a set of near-term and then long-term recommendations. On the near-term recommendations, those are things that I want to have accomplished by the end of the next quarter. So at the next QBR, we can go over whether or not we've completed these or not. So in this particular case, we've been talking a lot about replacing Windows 7 machines because of end of life. We are putting in Huntress and password barrel software protection is kind of our little security add-on. So we're talking about that. I do like to go ahead and myself highlight when there is a change in cost versus if there's not, just to let them know. In this particular case, we changed over their pfSense firewall into a BrightGates system. And then they wanted us to look for secure file sends. So that we brought them ShareX, ShareFile, and discussed that. And those are things we could put together. And then again, long-term recommendations. These are typically things that are on a 12 to 18 month horizon, 6 to 18 months. I will also like to put my wishes, like things that I wish that they would do that I don't think that they will do or will have a hard time paying for right now, because I find that the repetition and the reinforcing nature of it over time changes their minds. And it's one of the things that I credit to having nearly 100% adoption with my entire stock for basically every client I have that's been with me for over 18 months. So it's part, and it's just the just diligent nature that we go over this kind of stuff. And some of the newer stuff that we've been rolling out as add-ons has been for ourselves is kind of workflow automation, marketing automation, business processes and procedures, SharePoint. These are some new add-ons and business cells that we are kind of beta testing on some of our better customers right now, just to see how it goes, see how the pricing goes, see what the reception is. And so far it's been good, but you know, we'll see about how we can move up, scale that. And then finally, of course, we just have like the end thank you page on here. Now, other things, depending on the client, you know, I'm going to put more stuff in here or less stuff depending on what it is they have or don't have in our stack. If there are things that they do not have in our stack, for example, if this was a client that did not have FuseMail turned on for whatever reason, I would typically have the FuseMail logo on here just as a prompt to talk about it and just briefly mention it. Most of the time, I'm going to not try to do a heavy sales pitch. I'll just mention what it is, briefly do a, you know, paragraph level, you know, 30-second, 60-second elevator pitch on what it is, why I think you'd have it, the value of it, and then move on. And then sometimes I need, just if I need decisions right now, those are going to be down here in the near-term recommendations. Everything I have in the near-term recommendations, these are things I need a yes, no on today, and then get a little sign off on it if what they've done. So once I have that, I have my copy that I take home with their signatures on the piece, on their initials on the pieces that they agree to, and then we move forward working on those. Another big one is now that we have started rolling out Huntress. Huntress has really good reports, and so we will typically print their report out just whole cloth, and we'll stick it into the cybersecurity section instead of copying and pasting and moving that over. For us, what we end up doing is once we have these and we print them out, we actually have a thermal binder. So we will basically bind these into like an executive portfolio book that has the spine glue. So it's not loose paper, it's not stapled, it's not even like those little clip-ons. It looks like a little executive book. It's fairly inexpensive. We paid about $250, $300 for the machine, and then it's about a 75 cents to $1 per each binder that we do on here. Like I said, I bet probably close to 80-90% on coming away from a QBR with more money. One of the other things I like to do at least every 2 or 3 quarters is make sure I have something that I can bring them that's not going to cost them money, that's going to add on something to their existing service. Earlier this year, that was Dark Web ID that I rolled in to existing customers because I had extra licenses. More recently, one of the value deliverables that we've done is we've been putting together this disaster recovery plan. We're just following a basic template, but we're seeing more and more insurance companies, especially if you have cyber breach insurance or any kind of cyber insurance, requiring these kind of documents. So we will go through. It's fairly formulaic on what you put in here, and it's mostly, you know, copy and paste the owner's name or office manager's name and your information a few times on here with, you know, just find, replace, and then little changes here and there, what may or may not be part of them. But, you know, you show up, here's you a 50-page document, nicely bound for a disaster recovery plan for your company that you didn't have to pay a thing for. It's have had a big effect on the owners. You can see that they're impressed once you show up with this, you know, kind of just value add that really doesn't take much time to put together. and you don't see, or I haven't seen many of my customers or competitors doing that without, being explicitly asked for it. So those are just some things that I try to find, some ideas of things I try to find that I can give. Don't have to do it every time, but I try to do it once or twice a year, just so they feel like they're getting more value, that their value is growing, especially as time goes on. Okay, I think that's basically it. Kind of walked you through making it from beginning to end. Like I said, I'm able to do this now in about 15 to 20 minutes. The first couple of times took a little bit longer. Now that I've got a little bit of a rhythm down with it. Now that we're at the end, did you have any questions that you might have? Anything you wanted to see again or see slower or anything like that?
No, that pretty much answers all of my questions on how people are doing it, for sure.
Good.
Mike, are you able to send us that so we can, because it was a lot real fast for me at least. So we
Absolutely.
Can go back.
So we have been recording this, so we're going to have a full video of it. I will have the template. I will have the Excel spreadsheet that I have. I'll pull out some of the names on it or anonymize the names, but you'll have that with all the formulas that I put in the pivot table I've created, that kind of stuff. And so that way, whenever you're doing it the first couple of times, you can pull up the video, go to that section, and just watch it and see how I did it, where I put it and stuff like that.
Yeah. That'll be good. Okay. Yeah, definitely. Way more than what we have now, that's for sure.
Michael, you have a full NIST program for your clients that work with government?
We do not have a full NIST program right now. What I tell people is what I like to use the NIST for is we currently don't have any government contracting clients. We have worked with some smaller municipalities in the past. They don't fall under NIST, but what I like to enforce is that while we are not 100%, we try to use the NIST framework and best practices as our guidepost for our best practices that we do. So that while you yourself do not fall under NIST, this is just kind of the yardstick that we use to measure our clients by of how close or how well their security and best practices are set up. And that's basically the conversation that I have regarding this.
Okay. Hey, thanks so much for showing us where all this data is hidden at and how you extract it. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, it's one of those things.
Definitely.
The biggest problem is it's all in different silos, right? And you may have something in your stack that is going to be a little bit different. Maybe you don't use data, maybe you use Replibit or something else. And so some of these you may have to go into your stack, pull their report, and that's the biggest time sink and hurdle is just these individual silos. I've yet to find a way to just kind of pull the data in. As more and more of these get APIs, it's going to be possible to do it with something like Power BI, where you can just have it just pull all the data. But that's my end goal, But I've probably put myself a 12-month horizon on that because it's way in the back burner for me, unfortunately.
Awesome. Well, thanks again. I'll look forward to seeing it. And if there's ever anything we can help with, just let us know.
Absolutely. Well, thank you. And again, if anything comes up, whenever you start using it, have any questions, feel free to hit me up on Slack. I pretty much have it on all the time, and I'd be more than happy to assist you if I can.
Okay.
Great. Hey,
yeah,
thanks a lot. Have a good rest of your day.
Thanks. Have a great day. Bye.
Yep. Bye now.
Bye-bye.